The insurrection never happened. Well, this insurrection did, with stop the steal, storming the Capitol, breaking barriers, scaling walls, fighting police, breaking and entering, podium guy, zip tie guy, mail thief guy, whatever's happening with this guy.
Let's all say a prayer in this sacred space.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for gracing us with this opportunity.
But we're not here to talk about the political upheaval and potential downfall of the U.S. government. We're here to talk about that one time Jesus almost got dragged into an insurrection to overthrow the Roman Empire. Jesus is probably the most introverted person you'll ever meet. Generally speaking, there were about 144 people that would follow him on a regular basis. He had 12 disciples in his inner circle, but only 3 close friends, Peter, James, and John. And he liked to spend a lot of time alone. Like, a lot of time alone. Constantly finding ways to retreat to a quiet place away from people and leaving for solitary places when things got too overwhelming. And would you believe, even when he tried to get away, the crowds would keep chasing him down. It's an introvert's worst nightmare. This brings us to the miracle of feeding the 5,000. Jesus was teaching and preaching late into the evening when the disciples told him he needed to send the people home. But Jesus said they needed to eat before they left. So he took 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, did some Jesus magic, and 5,000 people were fed with plenty of baskets to spare. A wacky miracle, full bellies, minds blown, just an average day in the life of Jesus. Except there's more to the story. Before the fish and chips, Jesus and his disciples had a whole lot going on. Jesus sent out the disciples to teach and heal. He was teaching himself and healed a man by the pool. There were so many people looking for him, they didn't even have time to eat, and he found out his cousin had been beheaded. That's a whole lot for anyone to take in. So, Jesus quietly removed himself from the chaos to a solitary place on the far side of the Sea of Galilee, for illustrative purposes. The one side of the Sea of Galilee is an all-inclusive resort with poolside service, luxury accommodation, breathtaking views. It's a girl's vacay paradise. But the other side, a wasteland of mountains, cliffs, completely uninhabitable. The place literally screams, "Leave me alone." And that's what Jesus wanted. Peace, quiet, and solitude. He quietly made his escape from the crowds to a place no one would follow him. Except that's not what happened, and things start to get spicy. Let's review the checklist for a successful insurrection. Number 1, you need lots of people. We're talking zombie hordes that can easily outnumber a well-trained, better equipped, more prepared army. Because it doesn't matter how many bullets you have or how massive your arsenal is, eventually those zombies will plow through your defenses and gnaw on your meaty thighs. John specifically mentions that this miracle takes place around the time of Passover. It's a celebration and reminder of the Israelites' liberation from enslavement, the 10 plagues that ravaged Egypt, and the angel of death passing over the blood-stained door frames of the Israelites' homes. It's also a time for uprisings. Passover required a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, so the number of people in the area multiplied by a lot. The disciples even mentioned the 5,000 needed to leave to find lodging because not all of them were native to the area. With more people concentrated in a centralized place, it would be an opportune time to organize an uprising against their oppressor, the Roman government. And it's of note there were 5,000 men that followed Jesus to this very secluded, inhospitable place because they heard he was there. More on that in a moment. So, as a visual, you remember the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, where the explosion released hazardous chemicals into the air and environment, and Norfolk was like, "Oh, sorry about that, don't worry, we'll make this right." That city has a population of almost 4,800 people, and that's almost as many people that showed up to see Jesus. Number 2, you need a super secret meeting spot. Planning an uprising may seem easy, but with the increased number of people and the threat of riots on the rise, Rome would station troops everywhere. Try to coordinate bathroom breaks with friends, and eventually the teachers will catch on and revoke bathroom privileges. But you know where they won't be? A mountainous wasteland of sheer cliffs and impending doom. No one would be crazy enough to go there, so why would soldiers need to surveillance the area? Ironically, this spot was used for previous insurrection attempts, and doubly ironically, it's the same spot Jesus just happened to be at. Because Jesus just happens to have these things happen to him. Completely coincidental, I'm sure. Number 3, you need a leader. We have hordes of people at the ready who are heading to the super secret, no soldiers allowed meeting spot where previous insurrections had been planned, and wouldn't you know it, Jesus is also going there. This must be his purpose for being there, right? Why else would he be in the most remote place where talks of overthrowing Rome had been planned and executed, albeit unsuccessfully? And his resume precedes him. He's a well-known rabbi who's capable of performing all these incredible miracles, and did you hear the rumors that he's the Messiah and the one that's come to save us? Jesus Jesus was the most qualified and held the love of the people who were eagerly awaiting his command. The stage is set for Rome to burn to the ground. But that completely coincidental reason Jesus happened to be at the exact spot where these men were coming to meet him at a traditional site where past insurrections had been planned isn't so coincidental, because Jesus knew they were coming and he had a plan of his own. The disciples went to Jesus and asked him to send the crowd home. It was getting late and the people needed to find lodging and food. So Jesus turned to Philip and asked, "Where shall we buy the bread to feed them?" Andrew brought a boy who had 5 loaves and 2 fish. And real quick, let's talk about these loaves and fish, because we think it's some freshly baked sourdough loaves and a couple of walleyes that were caught moments ago, but we're really talking 5 Ritz crackers and 2 sardines. More of a makeshift Lunchables than dinner. Jesus asked the people to sit, so they sat in groups of 100s and 50s. Very reminiscent of military organization as the 5,000 men shuffled into a militia waiting for orders. But instead of a plan of attack, they got a meal. This should have been the not-so-subtle hint that Jesus wasn't going to lead them into glorious battle, but had a much deeper purpose to fulfill. Unfortunately, it went over everyone's heads. They saw the miracle and talked amongst themselves, saying, "This is the prophet. He's the one that's come to save us." And they were so riled up at that thought, they were going to force Jesus to be their king, because kings lead armies, fight wars, and Jesus was having none of it. He quietly escaped into the mountains and waited till nightfall when the crowds dispersed and couldn't force him to lead them as their king, which then leads to the miracle of him walking on water, since the disciples didn't even know where he went. All in all, Jesus' life was way more complicated than we give him credit for. An introvert constantly followed by massive crowds of people vying for his attention, and the poor guy never gets a moment's peace, especially when they desperately want a leader that would lead them in a victorious insurrection against the Roman Empire.